Daisy Hawkins never imagined that her bridal heels would go flying through the air at the Boston public market on a sunny Saturday morning, much less that it would be there, between fruit stands and the unmistakable aroma of fresh-baked goods, that she would find the love of her life. But life has those delicious ironies. Sometimes you need to run from the wrong place to bump into exactly where you should be. 3 hours earlier, Daisy stood before the mirror in the vestry of Trinity Church in Copley Square, staring at the reflection of a woman she didn't recognize. The French lace dress had cost more than 2 years of college tuition, but it weighed on her shoulders like armor she had never chosen to wear. Her fingers trembled as she adjusted the veil, and it wasn't pre-wedding nerves. It was pure terror. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," said Margaret Hawkins, her mother, entering the room with the rehearsed smile she used at social events. "Brad is a good catch. Your father would be proud." But Daisy didn't feel beautiful. She felt suffocated. The past few months had been a succession of decisions made by Brad. The honeymoon destination, Napa Valley, is more appropriate for our social standing. The apartment where they would live, close to the firm, of course. Even the reception menu. Nothing too casual, something more sophisticated. The decisive moment came when Emma, her influencer sister, appeared with her phone in hand. "Daisy, did you see? Brad posted a photo of us on his Instagram with the caption, 'My future sister-in-law already understands who's in charge in the family.' How sweet, right?" Daisy felt her stomach turn. She grabbed the phone and saw the photo. Emma posing, while Brad smiled with that proprietary air she knew all too well. In the comments, he responded to friends' congratulations with phrases like, "That's how it is, you have to educate them early," and "Women need a firm hand." That's when everything became crystal clear. It wasn't nerves. It was her instinct screaming that she was about to repeat her mother's mistake, who had lived 30 years being the perfect porcelain doll of a controlling husband. "Mom," said Daisy, removing her pearl earrings, "I can't do this." "What do you mean you can't?" "The guests are already—" "I can't marry him." Daisy began lifting her dress, looking for an exit. "I'm sorry, but I can't." And she ran, literally, through the church corridors, through the parking lot, through Boston streets, until her legs instinctively led her to the only place where she always felt at home, the public market. That's how Daisy Hawkins, barefoot, with her wedding dress flowing and tears of relief streaming down her face, arrived at Mr. Murphy's stand looking for strawberries. She needed to do something with her hands, something that made sense, and making the famous Love Strawberry tarts from her bakery always calmed her. "Miss, are you all right?" asked Mr. Murphy, concerned. "I'm fine," Daisy replied, trying to sound convincing. "I just need your best strawberries." It was at that moment that a masculine voice, amused and slightly sarcastic, echoed behind her. "For the love of God, what happened here? Is some indie film being shot, or did you really run away from your own wedding?" Daisy turned and came face to face with the most elegant man she had ever seen. Impeccable navy blue suit, perfectly styled hair, designer glasses that couldn't hide incredibly smart green eyes. Beside him, a French bulldog wore a leather collar that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. "Excuse me," she said, trying to regain her dignity, "but that's none of your business." "You're right," he agreed, but the smile didn't leave his lips. "But I must confess that in 34 years of life, I've never seen a bride buying strawberries at a public market. That definitely sparks curiosity." Daisy looked at him more carefully. There was something about him that didn't match the millionaire playboy look. Maybe it was the way he greeted Mr. Murphy by name, or how the bulldog seemed perfectly comfortable among the market stalls. "And you? What is a man in an Italian suit doing at a public market on a Saturday morning?" "Ah, that's my grandmother's fault," he laughed, and Daisy noticed the laugh was genuine. "Nana Edwards thinks everyone with money should know how much a pound of potatoes costs. According to her, it keeps your feet on the ground." "Edwards?" Daisy frowned. "As in Edwards Automotive Group?" "Malcolm Edwards, at your service." He made an exaggerated bow that drew the first genuine smile from Daisy in months. "And you are?" "Daisy Hawkins from Sweet Comfort Bakery." "Ah, so you're the famous Daisy of the Love Strawberry Tarts," he exclaimed. "Nana is always talking about your bakery. According to her, you work miracles with sugar and care." Daisy felt her cheeks flush. "Your grandmother is very kind." "Kind is me," he winked. "She's stubborn and manipulative, but she has good taste for sweets." At that moment, Freud, the bulldog, decided Daisy deserved closer investigation and began sniffing the hem of her wedding dress. The situation was so absurd that Daisy couldn't hold back her laughter. "Freud, leave the lady alone," said Malcolm, but he was laughing too. "Freud, like the psychoanalyst?" "Yes. He also has very interesting theories about human behavior, especially about why someone would run away from their own wedding to buy strawberries." Daisy stopped laughing and looked at him seriously. There was something in those green eyes that made her feel like he really saw her. Not the rebellious daughter of the Hawkins, not the scandalous ex-bride, but herself. "Maybe," she said slowly, "because some people take a little longer to discover what they really want from life. And have you discovered it?" Daisy looked around the market. The vibrant colors of the fruits, the sound of animated conversations, the familiar smell of spices and flowers. Then she looked at Malcolm, who watched her with an expression that mixed curiosity and something she couldn't define. "I'm starting to," she replied, taking the bag of strawberries from Mr. Murphy's hands. "Then," said Malcolm, taking out his wallet, "allow me to pay for the strawberries. Consider it an investment in your self-discovery process. You don't need to." "I insist. And if it's not too much to ask." He hesitated for a moment, as if he wasn't used to being vulnerable. "I would very much like to try those famous Love Strawberry Tarts someday." Daisy felt something strange happen in her chest, a lightness she hadn't felt in years. "The bakery is on Newbury Street. We're always open." "Perfect," Malcolm smiled. "See you soon then, Daisy Hawkins from Sweet Comfort Bakery." As she walked home, still barefoot but with her heart curiously light, Daisy had no idea that that casual encounter would completely change the course of her life, and much less that Malcolm Edwards, at that exact moment, was cancelling all his weekend commitments to find out everything he could about the most intriguing woman he had ever met. The following Monday, Sweet Comfort Bakery was in absolute chaos, not because of the cancelled wedding scandal, although half of Boston was talking about it, but because the demand for Love Strawberry Tarts had simply exploded. "Daisy, there's been a line at the door since 6 in the morning, exclaimed Tommy, the bakery employee who had arrived to find an anxious crowd. "It seems like everyone decided they desperately need love in dessert form." Daisy, who had barely slept thinking about her encounter with Malcolm, was trying to understand the phenomenon while preparing the 10th batch of the day. Grandma Rose, her grandmother, watched everything with a mysterious smile. "Grandma, do you know something about this?" asked Daisy, suspicious. "Me? Imagine, dear. I just mentioned to some friends from the book club that you were making special sweets. And maybe I mentioned it to Mrs. O'Brien from the pharmacy, and to Mr. Antonio from the bank, and to Grandma." "What? Can't a person be proud of her granddaughter?" Grandma Rose laughed, stirring a pot of chocolate ganache. "Besides, Cupid is working hard around here. You can feel it in the air." Daisy shook her head, amused. Her grandmother always attributed everything to Cupid, but there was something more happening. Since Saturday, she felt different, lighter, more herself, as if running from the altar had unlocked a version of herself that had been dormant for years. Daisy, Sophia, her best friend, appeared in the kitchen with a mischievous smile. "There's a guy out there who's causing quite a stir among the customers." "How so?" "Let's say he stands out a bit from the bakery's usual clientele. Designer suit, car that looks like it came out of a movie, and a bulldog that's being pampered more than a child at the mall." Daisy's heart raced. "Malcolm! Ah, so you already know the mysterious heartthrob? And I thought you were going to be single forever after that cinematic escape." Daisy dried her hands on her apron and took a deep breath. She didn't know why she was nervous. After all, he had said he would come try the sweets. but there was something about the anticipation of that encounter that left her strangely agitated. When she left the kitchen, she saw him immediately. Malcolm stood beside a table, observing the bakery's movement with genuine interest. He wore a more casual suit, but still elegant, and seemed completely comfortable even though he was clearly the best-dressed man within a 5-block radius. Freud was being adored by a group of children, and Daisy smiled when she noticed the bulldog seemed to enjoy the attention. "You came," she said, approaching. "A promise is a debt," Malcolm smiled. "And I confess, I was curious to see the place that makes a woman prefer to be here rather than in a church getting married." Daisy felt her cheeks flush. "It wasn't quite like that. Relax. I'm not judging. Actually, I think it was the most courageous decision I've ever seen anyone make." He paused, studying her face. "How are you? I imagine the last few days haven't been exactly peaceful." The question was simple, but the way he asked it, with sincere concern, without morbid curiosity, touched Daisy in an unexpected way. Well, surprisingly well, actually." She gestured around the bakery. "This keeps me centered, and the sweets seem to be helping other people too." "About that?" Malcolm lowered his voice. "Can I ask what's the secret of the love strawberry tarts? Because from what I'm seeing, half the city is addicted to them." Daisy laughed. "Do you want the official answer or the real one?" "I always prefer the truth. The real one is fresh strawberries, Belgian chocolate, a touch of rose liqueur, and lots of care. The official one, according to my grandmother, is that Cupid blesses each batch." "And do you believe the official version?" Daisy looked at Grandma Rose, who was animatedly explaining to a group of ladies the importance of saying 3 Hail Marys before eating any romantic sweet. "Let's say I don't rule out any possibilities," she smiled. "Want to try?" "Absolutely. But first," Malcolm hesitated, as if gathering courage, "I'd like to make a somewhat unusual request." "What? Can I bring my grandmother here? She's literally driving me crazy since she found out I talked to you at the market. Apparently you two are practically best friends in her conversations." Daisy laughed. "Of course. Grandma Rose would be delighted. They can exchange recipes and theories about Cupid." "Perfect. And maybe," he looked directly into her eyes, "you can tell me the complete story of how you ended up at the market that day. I have the impression there's much more behind that escape." There was something in the way he asked, not invasive but genuinely interested, that made Daisy want to share. How long had it been since someone showed real interest in getting to know her, not just fitting her into some preconceived mold? "All right," she agreed, "but it's a long story. I have time." At that moment, a commotion outside caught everyone's attention. Through the window, Daisy saw a luxury car stop in front of the bakery and a blonde woman, impeccably dressed, get out with an expression that mixed surprise and irritation. "Shit," Malcolm muttered. "What?" "Vivian, my ex-girlfriend," he sighed. "And from the way she's looking over here, she's not happy." Daisy felt a strange pang in her stomach. Jealousy? No, impossible. She barely knew Malcolm. Vivian entered the bakery like someone entering a stage. All eyes automatically turned to her. She was the type of woman Daisy had always secretly envied. Tall, elegant, with that natural confidence of someone who never had to question their place in the world. "Malcolm, darling," she exclaimed, going straight to him with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "What a surprise to find you here, and in such quaint surroundings." The condescending tone didn't go unnoticed by Daisy, nor the irritation that quickly passed through Malcolm's eyes. "Vivian," he greeted coldly. "Daisy, this is Vivian Sterling. Vivian, Daisy Hawkins, the bakery owner." "Ah, the runaway." Vivian smiled with barely disguised malice. "Everyone's talking about your marital drama. How brave of you to start over like this, making little cakes." Daisy felt anger rising, but before she could respond, Grandma Rose appeared beside her like an indignant guardian angel. "Young lady," said the grandmother with a sweet but dangerous voice, "in my bakery, we don't disrespect anyone. If you didn't come with good intentions, the door is right there." Vivian seemed surprised by the elderly woman's reaction, but quickly composed herself. "Of course, I apologize. I just came to greet Malcolm. I didn't know he had new interests. Vivian, Malcolm said firmly, Daisy is my friend, and even if she were anything else, it wouldn't be your concern. The tension in the air was palpable. Daisy felt like she was watching a duel of elegance and manners, where words were sharp weapons. Well, Vivian smiled again, I must go. I have a meeting about the charity campaign I'm organizing. Malcolm, you still intend to participate, don't you? Your company has always been one of the biggest contributors. It was a smart move, Daisy recognized. Vivian was reminding Malcolm of the ties that still connected them, of the social world they shared. We'll talk about that later, he replied diplomatically. After Vivian left, the atmosphere in the bakery took a few minutes to return to normal. Malcolm seemed visibly uncomfortable. Sorry about that, he said to Daisy. Vivian can be complicated. We all have complicated ex-boyfriends, Daisy replied, trying to sound unconcerned. It's part of life. But inside, a small voice whispered that maybe Malcolm lived in a very different world from hers. A world where ex-girlfriends looked like they came out of magazines and organized charity campaigns, while she had barely managed to escape a disastrous engagement. Daisy, Malcolm lightly touched her arm, don't let her bother you. Vivian has the gift of making everyone feel inadequate. It's a specialty of hers. I'm not bothered, Daisy lied. You are, and I understand perfectly. He sighed. How about we schedule a quieter moment to talk, away from external interference? Daisy hesitated. There was something about Malcolm that attracted her intensely, but also scared her. Maybe it was precisely the intensity of the attraction. Or maybe it was the fear of once again getting involved with someone from a world that wasn't hers. All right, she finally agreed, but on neutral territory, and Freud can come along. Malcolm smiled, the first genuine smile since Vivian had appeared. Deal. Freud is an excellent chaperone. As he said goodbye and left the bakery, Daisy couldn't take her eyes off his figure. There was something happening between them, something she couldn't define, but that left her both excited and terrified. Grandma Rose appeared beside her, following the same gaze. That one's trouble, you know, dear? Why, Grandma? Because... The grandmother smiled mischievously. Cupid? Malcolm asked, playing along. No, my boy, true love, which, by the way, is the only ingredient that doesn't increase in price and never runs out. Daisy looked at Malcolm, who looked at her, and both began to laugh, because Grandma Rose was right. True love really was the only ingredient that mattered. And there, in the noisy, life-filled community center they had built together, surrounded by their chosen family and the dreams that were becoming reality, Daisy knew she had found exactly what she didn't know she was looking for. Not a Prince Charming who would solve all her problems, but a partner who would be by her side while she solved her own problems. Not a perfect life, but a real life, with all the imperfections and surprises that implied. And when Malcolm kissed her right there, in the middle of the commotion, tasting like love's strawberry tarts and promises of the future, Daisy was certain she had made the right decision that Saturday morning when she ran from the church. Sometimes, running from where you shouldn't be is the only way to get to where you've always belonged. It is working overtime with you two. And when he puts in effort like that, it's because something big is coming. Daisy shook her head, laughing, but couldn't ignore the flutter in her stomach that her grandmother's words provoked. The real trouble was that she was starting to hope Grandma Rose was right. The morning walk in Boston Common had been Sophia's idea, who insisted that Daisy needed to clear her head before the date with Malcolm that afternoon. But Daisy could barely concentrate on what her friend was saying. Her mind was too busy revisiting every detail of Monday's conversation. Earth to Daisy. Sophia stopped walking and waved her hands in front of her friend's face. You haven't heard a word I've said in the last 10 minutes. I did. You were talking about things. I was telling you that Brad is spreading around the city that you had a pre-matrimonial breakdown and that he's available to talk when you regain your senses. The jerk is trying to save his own image at your expense. That got Daisy's attention. He's doing what? Exactly what you heard. According to Emma, who heard it from her assistant, Brad is playing the understanding victim, the abandoned groom who's still willing to forgive the unbalanced bride. Daisy felt the familiar anger rise in her chest. It was so typical of Brad to twist the situation so he came out as the hero of the story. "And there's more," Sophia continued. "Your mother is supporting his version. Apparently you two just need time to cool your heads. My mother said that, and your father is furious about the financial loss. The party, the catering, the church. According to him, you need to assume your responsibilities as an adult." Daisy stopped walking. For years, she had bowed to family expectations, molding her life according to what they considered appropriate. The engagement to Brad had been more of a family decision than hers. And now, when she had finally had the courage to choose for herself, they wanted to force her back into the mold. "You know what's the worst part," she said, sitting on one of the benches near the pond. "For years I thought they cared about me, that they wanted the best for me. And they do." Sophia sat beside her. "It's just that the best in their minds is you being the perfect daughter who doesn't cause problems and marries whoever they approve of." "But I don't want to be perfect, Sophia. I want to be real." "And what's more real than being terrified about a date with a guy you just met?" Daisy laughed despite everything. "You have a point." "Of course I do. And let me tell you something. If this Malcolm is half the man he seems to be, he won't care one bit about your family's drama. A good man recognizes a good woman." That afternoon, Daisy changed 3 times before deciding she looked good enough. She had chosen a simple dress, yellow like the daffodils blooming in Boston's parks, and low sandals that would allow her to walk comfortably. Nothing too elaborate, but that made her feel like herself. The meeting would be at Faneuil Hall, a location Malcolm had suggested for being democratic, neither too sophisticated nor too informal. Daisy arrived a few minutes before the agreed time and stood watching the movement of downtown Boston, tourists taking photos, street artists presenting their talents. Punctuality. I like that in a woman. She turned and found Malcolm walking toward her, Freud trotting alongside. This time he had traded the suit for a light blue dress shirt and dark jeans, elegant but relaxed. Daisy's heart did a small involuntary somersault. "Punctuality is a sign of respect," she replied. "My grandmother always said that." "Your grandmother seems to be a wise woman. Freud is eager to see you again, by the way. He hasn't stopped looking for you at the bakery yesterday." Daisy crouched down to pet the bulldog, who responded enthusiastically. "Hi, Freud. How are you, handsome?" Malcolm watched the interaction with a smile Daisy couldn't interpret. "He has good taste for people," he commented. "I've never seen Freud get attached to someone so quickly." "Animals sense our energy." Daisy stood up. "He must sense that I like him." "Must be that," Malcolm agreed, but there was something more in his tone. They began walking through the Faneuil Hall area, and Daisy was surprised by how easy the conversation was. Malcolm was funny without trying to be the center of attention, intelligent without being pedantic, interested without being invasive. "This might sound like morbid curiosity," he said after a few minutes, "but do you regret it? Running away, I mean." Daisy thought carefully before answering. "No, I regret taking so long to do it, and hurting people in the process, although thinking about it, I think I hurt pride more than feelings." "What do you mean?" "Brad was angry because he was publicly rejected, not because he lost the love of his life. My parents were embarrassed by the scandal, not worried about my happiness. And my mother, well, my mother was more interested in making sure the wedding sweets weren't wasted." Malcolm stopped walking and stared at her. "Seriously?" "Seriously." The next day, she called to ask if I could at least make the sweets for her to serve at her friend's tea party, so as not to waste the investment, were her exact words. Jesus Christ. Exactly. That's when I knew for sure I had made the right decision. A family that cares more about sweets and social embarrassment than the fact that their daughter is unhappy enough to run from her own wedding. Well, maybe it's not a family that deserves so much sacrifice. They sat on one of the benches near the harbor. Freud lay down at Malcolm's feet, seeming perfectly comfortable. "And you?" Daisy asked. Have you ever had to make a decision that disappointed the whole family? Malcolm laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Several times. My family thinks I should have been married years ago, producing heirs for the Edwards automotive empire. And why aren't you? Because I haven't found someone who loves me for who I am, not for what I have. He looked at the water, his expression becoming more serious. My last girlfriend, Vivian, whom you met yesterday, broke up with me because I refused to invest in a company of hers without doing proper financial analysis. According to her, if I really loved her, I would trust her blindly. Ah, yeah. And my grandmother, whom you'll meet, is always introducing me to family girls who can barely maintain a 5-minute conversation without mentioning how much money their fathers have. It must be lonely, Daisy said softly. It is, very. He looked at her. That's why I was so intrigued by you. A woman who runs from her own wedding to buy strawberries at a public market isn't exactly the type of person I usually meet. And is that good or bad? Definitely good. Very good. There was something in the way he said it that made Daisy's heart race. They looked at each other for a moment, and she felt something was changing between them, becoming more intense, more real. Malcolm, she began, but was interrupted by a feminine and animated voice. Oh my God, Daisy Hawkins! They turned and saw Emma, Daisy's sister, approaching with a camera in hand and a smile Daisy knew all too well. The smile of someone who had sniffed out a content opportunity for social media. Emma, Daisy sighed. What are you doing here? Recording content about Boston's tourist spots for my channel? But what an incredible coincidence to find you here. And with, she looked at Malcolm with obvious interest. Such interesting company. Emma, this is Malcolm. Malcolm, my sister Emma. Ah, the famous Malcolm. Emma clapped her hands. Mom and Dad are dying to meet you. Are you really the owner of Edwards Automotive Group? Because I was thinking about doing a partnership with a luxury car brand and... Emma, Daisy interrupted, embarrassed. That's not how things work. Relax, sis. I'm just being sociable. Emma turned to Malcolm with an enchanting smile. You don't mind if I post a photo of us, do you? My followers will love meeting the man who conquered my sister. Daisy felt her face catch fire. Emma! Actually, Malcolm said politely but firmly, I prefer not to appear on social media. Privacy issue. Emma seemed genuinely shocked. Seriously? But you'd be missing incredible exposure. I have over 200,000 followers. I'm sure they're very loyal. Malcolm smiled diplomatically. But even so, I prefer to keep my personal life away from the internet. Daisy fell a little more in love right there. In 5 minutes, Malcolm had shown more respect for her boundaries than Brad had in 2 years of relationship. Well, Emma put away the camera with a disappointed grimace. You don't know what you're missing, but that's okay. Daisy, Mom wants to talk to you. About Brad. The mood changed instantly. Daisy felt her stomach contract. What about Brad? He showed up at home yesterday, talked to Dad for almost 2 hours. They're planning something for you two to talk like adults. Emma made air quotes. I thought I should warn you. What kind of thing? I don't know exactly, but Dad was talking about financial responsibilities and damage reparation, and Mom agreed that you two need to work things out. Daisy felt the familiar anger rise, but this time mixed with a determination she hadn't felt in a long time. Tell them, she said firmly, that I have nothing to work out with Brad, and if they want to talk to me, they know where to find me. Daisy. No, Emma. It's over. I'm not going to be pushed into decisions I don't want to make just to keep family peace. Emma seemed surprised by the firmness in her sister's voice. Okay, I'll tell them. But you know how they are. I know, and that's exactly why I won't give in. After Emma left, Daisy and Malcolm remained silent for a few minutes. She was visibly shaken, and he seemed to sense she needed a moment to recompose. Your family is intense, he finally commented. That's a polite way of saying controlling and self-interested, Daisy sighed. Sorry about that. It must be strange for you, who has a family that at least genuinely cares. Don't idealize my family, Daisy. Nana can be loving, but she also has her own ideas about how my life should be. And as for my brother Jake, Malcolm shook his head. Let's say family dysfunction is universal. How so? Jake is 32 years old and has never worked seriously in his life. He's always trying to get a position in the company without deserving it, and when he finally gets an opportunity, he always finds a way to mess it up. Malcolm laughed without humor. Last week he convinced a client to buy a car that had already been sold because he didn't bother to check the inventory. Wow! And he still had the nerve to say it was the computer system's fault. Nana always defends him, saying everyone has their time, but sometimes I wonder if Jake will ever mature. Daisy observed Malcolm's expression as he talked about his brother. There was frustration there, but also genuine sadness, as if he carried the weight of trying to be the perfect son and brother to compensate for Jake's failures. It must be difficult carrying the company's responsibility alone, she said softly. It is, especially because it wasn't exactly a choice. When my father died 5 years ago, I automatically became responsible for everything. The company, Nana, Jake. Sometimes I feel like I never had the chance to discover who I am outside of all that. And who would you like to be? Malcolm looked at her with an expression that mixed surprise and gratitude, as if no one had ever asked that question before. You know what's funny? I don't even know anymore. I've been just the CEO of Edwards Automotive, the responsible grandson, the brother who cleans up messes for so long that I forgot to think about what I really want. Well, Daisy smiled, maybe it's time to find out. After all, running from weddings isn't the only way to restart your life. Sometimes it's enough to admit you don't need to be perfect for everyone. You talk like it's easy. It's not. Believe me, I know. But, she hesitated, gathering courage, maybe it's easier when you have someone who accepts you as you really are. They looked at each other again, and this time Daisy didn't look away. There was something happening between them, something real and scary and wonderful at the same time. Daisy, Malcolm said softly, can I ask you a very direct question? Of course. Do you feel this too? This connection? Because I'm not imagining it, am I? Daisy's heart raced. No, you're not imagining it. Good, he smiled, because I was starting to think I had completely lost my mind. If you lost it, then we're both crazy. Malcolm extended his hand, and Daisy took it without hesitation. Their fingers intertwined naturally, as if they had done it thousands of times before. So, he said, what do we do now? Now, Daisy smiled, feeling a lightness in her chest she hadn't experienced in years. Now we stop thinking so much and just let it happen. And at that moment, sitting on a bench at Faneuil Hall, with Freud sleeping at their feet, and the sun beginning to set over Boston Harbor, Daisy knew her life had changed forever. Not because she had found a Prince Charming who would solve all her problems, but because she had found someone who made her want to be the best version of herself. Daisy's phone vibrated. A message from her mother. Need to talk to you urgently about Brad. Come home today. Daisy looked at the screen, then at Malcolm, and made a decision. She turned off the phone. Problems? He asked. Nothing that can't wait until tomorrow, she replied, squeezing his hand. Today, I just want to be here. And for the first time in a long time, Daisy Hawkins was exactly where she wanted to be. The following week brought changes Daisy never could have predicted. Sweet Comfort Bakery was officially out of strawberries, a situation that bordered on the absurd in a city where the fruit had always been abundant. Daisy, seriously, there are no strawberries anywhere, exclaimed Tommy, arriving breathless at the bakery after visiting 3 different markets. Mr. Murphy said his supplier increased the price by 300% overnight, and look at this. He showed a news report on his phone. Love strawberry tart fever hits Boston. Fruit price soars and becomes luxury item. Daisy read over the employee's shoulder, incredulous. The report explained how the bakery's famous sweets had created unprecedented demand for strawberries in the city, leading suppliers to drastically increase prices. This is crazy, she murmured. It's just a dessert. It's not just a dessert, Grandma Rose appeared in the kitchen with a mysterious smile. It's a miracle from Cupid. And miracles don't come cheap. Grandma, please. Dear, Did you see how many marriage proposals happened here at the bakery just this week? Three couples got engaged after eating the love strawberry tarts. Daisy shook her head, but couldn't hide her smile. Grandma Rose was radiant with all the attention the bakery was receiving, especially after a famous Boston food blogger posted a video eating the sweets and declaring they were magical. "Speaking of Cupid," said Tommy with a mischievous smile, "your Prince Charming called, wants to know if you'd like to have lunch with him today." Malcolm called 3 times and sent flowers. Tommy pointed to a bouquet of yellow roses Daisy hadn't noticed, with a note that says, "To brighten your day as much as you brighten mine." Daisy felt her cheeks flush. In the past few days, she and Malcolm had talked daily, but they were still in the delicious phase of mutual discovery. Each conversation revealed something new. Each encounter deepened the connection between them. "So, are you going to call him?" Before Daisy could answer, the door chime rang and Sophia entered like a hurricane, with an expression that mixed urgency and anger. "Daisy, we need to talk, now." "What happened?" Brad happened." Sophia threw a magazine on the counter. "Did you see this?" It was one of the local society magazines, and on the cover was a photo of Brad in his office, with the headline, "Betrayed lawyer forgives ex-fiancée and reveals, I still love her." Daisy felt her stomach turn. "He didn't do this." "He did, and there's more." Read the interview. With trembling hands, Daisy opened the magazine to the indicated page. The interview was even worse than she had imagined. Brad painted himself as the understanding groom who was willing to forgive his ex-fiancée's emotional crisis. He spoke about family pressures and difficult moment in her life, always positioning himself as the magnanimous hero of the situation. But the part that infuriated her most was when he insinuated that Daisy was being influenced by ill-intentioned people and that he was fighting to save her from herself. "That bastard," Daisy murmured, feeling anger rise like lava. "He's trying to make me look crazy." "Not only that," Sophia said grimly, "he also mentioned that he's taking the necessary legal measures to recover the damages caused by the cancellation." "Daisy, he might be talking about a lawsuit." "Why?" "I didn't do anything illegal." "No, but technically you had signed contracts, catering, church, band. If he wants to be a jerk, he can try to hold you responsible for the costs." Daisy sat heavily in a chair. She had thought that running from the wedding would be the end of her problems with Brad, but apparently he was just beginning to show his vindictive side. "What do I do?" "First, you get a lawyer. Second, you don't talk to the press without legal guidance. And third," Sophia hesitated, "you tell Malcolm everything." "Why?" "Because if you two are getting serious, he needs to know what he's facing. Brad won't stop here, and you know it." At that moment, as if summoned by the conversation, Malcolm entered the bakery. One look at Daisy's face and the open magazine on the counter was enough for him to understand something was wrong. "What happened?" he asked, immediately approaching her. Daisy hesitated. It was too early in their relationship to involve him in her family dramas, but looking into Malcolm's concerned eyes, she knew she couldn't lie to him. "My ex-fiancé gave an interview to a magazine. It's nothing major, just—" "Can I see?" Daisy handed over the magazine reluctantly. Malcolm read quickly, and his expression grew increasingly serious. "This guy is an idiot," he said finally, "and potentially dangerous." "How so dangerous?" "Daisy, he's building a public narrative where you're the unstable villain and he's the victim. This is classic strategy to prepare ground for legal action." Malcolm sat beside her. "Do you have a lawyer?" "No, I never needed one." "Now you do, and I know some excellent ones." "Malcolm, you don't need to get involved in this." "Yes, I do," he said firmly, "because I care about you, and because no one should have to face a manipulator alone." Sophia and Grandma Rose exchanged meaningful looks. Tommy pretended he was very busy arranging the sweets in the display case. "Besides," Malcolm continued, "I know Brad's type. He'll try to intimidate you, make you feel small and guilty, but he forgot one important thing." "What?" "That now you're not alone anymore." Daisy felt her eyes fill with tears, not of sadness, but of something she couldn't name. Relief, perhaps, or gratitude, or simply the overwhelming feeling of finally having someone on her side. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't need to thank me. Now let's solve this situation." Malcolm took out his phone. "I'm going to call Dr. Richard Sullivan. He's a specialist in civil law and has no patience for manipulators." While Malcolm made the call, Daisy looked around the bakery, her grandmother preparing chocolate ganache with the concentration of a scientist, Tommy explaining to a customer the mystical properties of the love strawberry tarts, Sophia flipping through the magazine with an indignant expression. That place, those people, represented her real life, her choice, her happiness. And she wasn't going to let Brad destroy that. "Richard can see us today at 3 p.m., Malcolm returned with the phone in hand. "If you want, I can accompany you." "You would do that?" "Daisy," he took her hand, "I would do anything for you." The way he said it, simple, direct, without drama, made Daisy's heart race. It wasn't a cinematic love declaration, but something much more precious, the sincere promise of someone who really cared. "Then let's go," she said, squeezing his hand. "Let's show Brad he chose the wrong person to intimidate." "That's the spirit!" exclaimed Grandma Rose from the kitchen. "Cupid doesn't like men who hurt women." "Grandma!" "What? It's true. And look," she waved the wooden spoon, "you two together against this pest. If this isn't a sign that Cupid is working, I don't know what is." Malcolm laughed. "Your grandmother has a point. It seems the Cupid is really on our side." "On our side?" Daisy repeated, liking the sound of that. "On our side," he confirmed, bringing her hand to his lips and kissing it gently. "If you want, of course." "I want?" Daisy replied without hesitation. "I definitely want." And at that moment, surrounded by people who loved her and beside the man who was changing her life in ways she was still discovering, Daisy felt stronger than ever. Brad could try to intimidate her, her family could try to control her, but she had something they could never take away, the certainty of who she really was. And from the way Malcolm looked at her, she knew he saw exactly that in her. Not the rebellious daughter of the Hawkins or the scandalous ex-fiancée, but Daisy, simply Daisy. And for the first time in her life, that was more than enough. Later, in Dr. Richard Sullivan's office, Daisy discovered her suspicions were correct. Brad was indeed preparing a lawsuit for moral and material damages, claiming the wedding cancellation had damaged his professional reputation and caused financial losses. "It's a weak case," explained Dr. Sullivan, a man in his 50s with the air of someone who had seen everything. "But it can be exhausting and expensive for you to defend." "How expensive?" Daisy asked, feeling her stomach tighten. "Depends on how long he wants to drag this out. Could be a few thousand or several tens of thousands." Daisy paled. She didn't have that kind of money. "But," Dr. Sullivan continued, "we have some options. I can file a preventive action alleging harassment and defamation. The interview he gave can be used against him. Would that work?" "Probably yes. And there's another thing. If he really files a lawsuit, I can ask for moral damages compensation for you. The guy basically called you unbalanced in a magazine." Daisy looked at Malcolm, who had remained quiet throughout the explanation. "What do you think?" she asked him. "I think you should fight," he said simply. "Not for revenge, but because people like Brad only stop when they meet resistance." "Then that's it," Daisy decided. "Let's move forward." Dr. Sullivan smiled. "Excellent. I'll prepare the documents. And Mr. Edwards," he turned to Malcolm, "thank you for referring the case. I always enjoy defending people who are on the right side." When they left the office, Daisy felt strangely light, as if a weight she didn't even know she was carrying had been lifted from her shoulders. "How do you feel?" Malcolm asked as they walked down the street. "Powerful," she replied, surprised by her own answer. "For the first time in a long time, I feel powerful." "Good, because you are. Very powerful." They stopped in front of Malcolm's car, but neither moved to get in. "Malcolm," Daisy said softly, "can I ask you something?" "Always. Why are you doing all this? We've known each other for a week. You don't owe me anything." Malcolm looked at her for a long moment before answering. "Because," he said finally, "in 1 week, You've made me feel more like myself than I've felt in years, because when I'm with you, I'm not the CEO or the responsible grandson or the brother who cleans up messes. I'm just me. And who are you? I'm still finding out. But I know it's someone who wants to be by your side while you discover who you are too. Daisy felt her eyes fill with tears again. Malcolm, and besides, he smiled, breaking the intensity of the moment, Freud fell in love with you, and I always trust his judgment. Daisy laughed through her tears. Freud has good taste. He does, just like me. And there, on the sidewalk of a busy Boston street, Malcolm kissed Daisy for the first time. It was a soft kiss, hesitant at first, but quickly deepened when she responded with all the intensity of the feelings growing between them. When they separated, both were breathless. Wow, Daisy murmured. Wow is a good definition, Malcolm agreed, smiling. So, she said, trying to regain composure, what do we do now? Now, Malcolm opened the car door for her. Now we go home. To your home, I mean. Because I promised Grandma Rose I would try her famous chocolate ganache today. You promised what? Oh, didn't I mention? I called her before coming to get you. We're practically best friends now. Daisy shook her head, laughing. You're corrupting my grandmother, or she's corrupting me. Haven't decided yet. As they drove through Boston streets, with the afternoon gently falling over the city, Daisy knew she was living one of those moments that would change her life forever. Not just because she had found someone who loved her, but because she had found someone who made her want to be brave enough to deserve that love. 2 weeks later, Daisy's life had transformed into something she never could have imagined. The bakery was thriving despite, or perhaps because of, the strawberry shortage, which had forced Daisy to create new flavors that became instant hits. The lawsuit against Brad was going in her favor, especially after Dr. Sullivan discovered the ex-fiancé had lied about several damages he claimed to have suffered, but the biggest change was in her relationship with Malcolm. What had started as an intense attraction had evolved into something deeper, more real. They saw each other almost every day, whether at the bakery, his apartment, or simply walking through Boston streets, discovering corners of the city neither of them knew. It was a Thursday morning when Grandma Rose made the announcement that would change everything. Daisy, dear, I have news to tell you. Daisy was preparing a new batch of passion fruit truffles when her grandmother appeared in the kitchen with a smile she couldn't decipher. What news, Grandma? Well, Grandma Rose sat in a chair and clasped her hands in her lap, as she always did when she had something important to say. Remember how I always talked about writing a cookbook? I remember. You always said that someday you'd organize all those notes from great-grandma's notebook. Well then, I not only organized them but wrote the book, and not only wrote it but already sent it to a publisher. And not only sent it to a publisher, but they want to publish it. Daisy stopped stirring the mixture and stared at her grandmother. What? The book will be called A Love of Strawberries, Grandma Rose's Recipes, and the publisher wants to launch it next month with a party here at the bakery. Grandma, that's incredible. Daisy dropped everything and hugged Grandma Rose. Why didn't you tell me you were writing? Because I wanted it to be a surprise, and because I wasn't sure it would work out. Grandma Rose was radiant. But now that it did, I can tell you the best part. The publisher got a sponsor to make the book very affordable, so everyone can buy it. What sponsor? That's a surprise for later, but I can tell you it's someone very special. Daisy felt a suspicion growing in her chest. Grandma, what? Can't I have secrets? Before Daisy could insist, Tommy burst into the kitchen with a panicked expression. Daisy! There's a problem out there. What kind of problem? The kind that involves city inspectors, documents, and words like irregularity and fine. Daisy felt her stomach turn. She left the kitchen and found 2 men in suits talking to Sophia, who had stopped by the bakery for coffee. The men had that official posture that promised nothing good. Excuse me, Daisy approached. Can I help you with something? Are you the establishment owner? Asked the taller of the 2. I am. Daisy Hawkins. Inspector John Peterson from Urban Development Department. We're here to notify you about some irregularities in the bakery's operation." "What irregularities?" The inspector consulted a clipboard. "Inappropriate use of public space, disturbance of peace, public gathering on public roads, and," he made a dramatic pause, "exercise of commercial activity without adequate permit for current volume of movement." Daisy felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. "But I have a permit. Everything is regulated." "You had, Mom, but the permit was issued for a small establishment. Current movement characterizes medium size, which requires new documentation." "And what's the deadline for me to regularize this?" 10 days. Otherwise, we'll have to shut down the establishment." 10 days. Daisy felt the world spin around her. It was impossible to get new documentation in 10 days. Anyone who had dealt with American bureaucracy knew that. "Who made this complaint?" asked Sophia, who knew the system well enough to know such inspections didn't happen by chance. "We can't reveal the source," said the inspector, but something in his tone suggested he wasn't comfortable with the situation either. After the inspectors left, Daisy sat in one of the bakery chairs, feeling completely defeated. She had worked so hard to build this, and now someone was trying to destroy everything. "It was Brad," she said simply. "It had to be him." "Probably," Sophia agreed grimly. "When he realized the lawsuit wasn't going to work, he moved to another strategy." "But how can he have access to city information?" "Daisy, his father has been a city councilman for 15 years. He knows everyone." Daisy buried her face in her hands. It was too late to give up, but it seemed too early to have to fight so hard. It was at that moment that Malcolm entered the bakery. One look at the environment and Daisy's expression was enough for him to understand something was very wrong. What happened? Daisy told him everything, from the inspector's visit to the suspicions about Brad. Malcolm listened in silence, but she could see anger growing in his eyes. "This guy has crossed all limits," he said when she finished. "But there's not much we can do. 10 days to get new documentation is impossible." "It's not impossible. It's difficult, but not impossible." Malcolm took out his phone. "Do you authorize me to make some calls?" "Malcolm, you don't need to." "Yes, I do, because this isn't just about you anymore. It's about us, and I won't let anyone destroy what we're building." The way he said "us" made Daisy's heart race. It wasn't possessiveness or an attempt at control. It was partnership. It was the promise that they would face problems together. "All right," she agreed. "Make the calls." Malcolm stepped away and spent the next 20 minutes on the phone. Daisy couldn't hear the conversations, but from his tone, she knew he was calling in important favors. "Done," he returned with a smile. "Dr. Sullivan will file an injunction today alleging harassment, and I managed to schedule a meeting at City Hall tomorrow morning with the Urban Development Secretary." "How did you manage that?" "Let's say Edwards Automotive Group is one of the largest employers in the metro area, and I've never asked for favors before." Malcolm held her hands. "Daisy, we're going to solve this together." Daisy felt her eyes fill with tears. "Why are you doing all this for me?" "Because you're worth it. And because," he hesitated for a moment as if gathering courage, "because I'm falling in love with you." The world stopped. Daisy could hear her own heart beating, could smell the sweets in the display case, could see Grandma Rose peeking from the kitchen with a huge smile, but all of that seemed distant compared to what she had just heard. "You are, I am, hopelessly, irremediably in love." Malcolm smiled with that mixture of vulnerability and determination that made Daisy melt. "And before you say it's too early or we barely know each other, I know it's crazy, but I also know I've never felt this way before. Malcolm, and I know you might not be at the same point yet, and that's okay. I can wait. I'm falling in love with you too," Daisy interrupted him softly. The smile that spread across Malcolm's face was like watching the sunrise. "Are you really?" "I am, and you're right. It's crazy, but it's very good crazy." This time, when they kissed, it was different. It was a kiss that sealed something, that promised something, that changed everything. And when they separated, both knew they had moved from one territory to another. "Well," said Sophia, who had watched everything with a huge smile. "I think I can leave now. My job as love counselor is officially complete." "Sophia!" Daisy protested, blushing. "What? You two are adorable." "And Grandma Rose, stop spying from the kitchen." Grandma Rose appeared with an innocent air. "I wasn't spying. I was checking if Cupid was working properly, and from what I saw, he is." Everyone laughed, and the tension from the moment with the inspectors seemed to diminish a little. But Daisy knew the fight wasn't over yet. The next morning, she and Malcolm were at City Hall at 8 a.m. sharp. The Urban Development Secretary, Dr. Carlos Mendez, received them personally, something that, according to Malcolm, didn't happen frequently. "Mr. Edwards, it's a pleasure to finally meet you personally," said Dr. Mendez, shaking Malcolm's hand. "And Ms. Hawkins, I heard your bakery is very successful." "Thank you," Daisy replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "But we're facing some bureaucratic difficulties." "Yes, I heard about the problem, and I can tell you we'll find a solution. City Hall is interested in supporting local enterprises that generate employment and move the economy." The meeting lasted an hour, and at the end, Daisy left there with a document guaranteeing 30 days to regularize all documentation, plus specific guidance on which documents would be necessary. "How was it so easy?" she asked Malcolm as they walked back to the car. "It wasn't easy. It was fair. The difference is that not everyone has access to justice the same way. And that's a problem that goes far beyond your bakery." Daisy stopped walking. "You're right, and that bothers me." "What bothers you?" "The fact that I managed to solve my problem because I know you, who has influence. How many other people are going through the same situation and don't have this luck?" Malcolm looked at her with an expression that mixed surprise and admiration. "That's what I love about you." "What?" "You never lose sight of what really matters. Even when you're solving your own problems, you think about others." "It's just that." Daisy hesitated, trying to organize her thoughts. "All my life I lived in a bubble, the Hawkins family bubble, where everything was solved with money and influence. And I hated that, but I also benefited from it. Now that I'm building something on my own, I don't want to reproduce the same system." "And what do you want to do?" "I don't know yet, but I want to use this experience for something good. Maybe help other small business owners who go through the same difficulties." Malcolm stopped and kissed her right there in the middle of the sidewalk. "That's why I'm in love with you," he said when they separated. "You could easily settle for being just another successful businesswoman, but you want to be more than that. And you? What do you want to be?" "I want to be someone who helps you change the world, even if it's one little piece at a time." They were getting to the car when Daisy's phone rang. It was Tommy, and he sounded hysterical. "Daisy, you need to come here now." "What happened?" "There's a moving truck in front of the bakery, and Grandma Rose is fighting with some men who want to come in here." "What do you mean, moving truck?" "I don't know. They said they have an eviction order, but Grandma Rose said they'll have to step over her dead body first." Daisy looked at Malcolm in panic. "Let's go." They arrived at the bakery to find a chaotic scene. Grandma Rose was planted at the bakery door with a wooden spoon in hand, facing 3 big men who clearly didn't know how to deal with a 76-year-old lady determined to defend her territory. "Grandma, what's happening?" "These men showed up here with a paper saying we're forced to leave. But I said the only way they'll get me out of here is by carrying me." Daisy took the paper from one of the men's hands and read quickly. It was an eviction order based on an allegation that the building had been sold and the new owners wanted to reclaim it. "This can't be right," she murmured. "We have a lease contract." "Ma'am," said one of the men, clearly uncomfortable, "we're just following orders. If there's a problem, you need to talk to whoever issued the order." "And who issued it?" The man consulted his papers. "Dr. Theodore Sterling." Daisy felt like she'd been slapped. She knew that name. "Theodore Sterling," Malcolm repeated, and there was something in his voice that made Daisy turn to look at him. "Do you know him?" "He's my uncle," Malcolm said with a grim expression. "My mother's brother, and the family's lawyer." The puzzle pieces began to fit together in Daisy's head. "Do you think—" I think someone is using my family to attack you, and I'm going to find out who." Malcolm took out his phone and dialed a number. "Theodore? It's me, Malcolm. I need to talk to you now." "No, it can't wait. About the eviction order you issued against Daisy Hawkins' bakery. What do you mean you don't know what I'm talking about?" The conversation continued for several minutes, with Malcolm getting visibly more tense with each word. When he hung up, his expression was a mixture of anger and concern. "So?" Daisy asked. "Theodore swears he didn't issue any eviction order, and he's never heard of any building sale." Malcolm looked at the moving truck men. "Can I see your documents?" After a few minutes analyzing the papers, Malcolm shook his head. "These documents are fake. The signature isn't even Theodore's." "So someone forged documents?" Daisy asked, incredulous. "It seems so, and I have a very strong suspicion of who it might have been." At that moment, as if summoned by the conversation, Vivian appeared around the corner. She walked with that studied elegance as always, but there was something triumphant in her expression that made Daisy's stomach contract. "Malcolm, darling," she exclaimed, approaching as if there wasn't a moving truck and 3 confused men in front of the bakery. "What a coincidence to find you here." "Coincidence is an interesting word," Malcolm replied coldly, "considering someone just tried to evict Daisy using fake documents." Vivian's mask slipped for a fraction of a second, but she quickly recovered. "Oh my, how terrible. Who would do such a thing?" "That's exactly what I'd like to know." Daisy watched the interaction between them, and something in Vivian's body language confirmed her suspicions. There was a poorly disguised satisfaction there, a sense of mission accomplished. "Vivian," Daisy said softly, "can I ask you a question?" "Of course, dear. Why do you hate me so much? We didn't even know each other before Malcolm and I met." "Hate? What an exaggeration. I don't hate you." "Then why are you trying to destroy my life?" Vivian laughed, but the sound had nothing amusing about it. "You really think this is all about you? How narcissistic. Then what is it about?" "It's about Malcolm, obviously. It's about the fact that you two are playing house when anyone with half a brain can see this won't work out." "And why wouldn't it work out?" Malcolm asked, taking a step forward. "Because you're from different worlds, Malcolm. She's a baker who ran away from her own wedding, and you're the CEO of one of the state's biggest companies. You think this is a romantic movie, but real life doesn't work that way." "You're right about one thing," Daisy said calmly. "Real life isn't a romantic movie. In real life, people choose who they want to fight for. And I chose to fight for Malcolm, just as he chose to fight for me. And you?" Malcolm turned to Vivian. "You chose to fight dirty, forging documents, inventing eviction orders. How far are you willing to go?" Vivian stared at him for a long moment, and Daisy could see the exact moment she decided to abandon any pretense of innocence. "As far as necessary," she said simply. "You'll get tired of this game, Malcolm, and when that happens, I'll be here." "No," Malcolm replied, with a firmness that made Daisy fall a little more in love with him. "You won't be, because I don't want you in my life. And if you continue trying to harm Daisy, I'll have to take legal action." Vivian seemed genuinely surprised by the final rejection, as if, until that moment, she really believed Malcolm would eventually come back to her. "You'll regret this," she said finally. "No," Malcolm took Daisy's hand. "I only regret taking so long to see who you really are." Vivian left without saying anything else, and the moving truckmen, realizing the whole situation had been a misunderstanding, also left. But Daisy knew this was far from over. "She won't give up," she said to Malcolm. "I know, but neither will we." Grandma Rose, who had watched everything with interest, finally lowered the wooden spoon. "Well," she said, "that was exciting. Now who wants coffee? All this commotion made me thirsty. And despite everything, the threats, the fake documents, the vengeful ex-girlfriend, Daisy found herself laughing. Because she was there, in front of her bakery, beside the man she loved and the grandmother who raised her, facing problems like a family. A chosen family, built with love and courage. And for the first time since she ran from the altar, Daisy felt completely at home. Epilogue. 6 months later, Sweet Comfort Bakery was unrecognizable. Not just because of the fame it had gained, Grandma Rose's book, A Love of Strawberries, Grandma Rose's Recipes, had become a national phenomenon, with the grandmother giving interviews on television shows and even participating in a weekly cooking segment about regional cuisine, but also because of the physical structure. Malcolm had bought the neighboring building and transformed it into a community culinary center in honor of Grandma Rose. The space offered cooking classes for community youth, workshops on entrepreneurship for small business owners, and once a week, a community dinner where everyone was welcome, regardless of financial condition. It was the way we found to give back, Daisy explained to a journalist who was doing a story about the project. The bakery only exists because the community supported us. Now we want to support the community too. The journalist, an enthusiastic young woman, was taking notes quickly. And how has the reception been? Incredible, Tommy appeared in the conversation, now promoted to bakery manager. Last week we had 3 people who started their own businesses after the workshops, and Mr. Murphy from the market is giving classes on fruit selection. And the man who tried to harm the bakery? How did that story end? Daisy exchanged a look with Malcolm, who was on the other side of the room, organizing chairs for the afternoon class. Brad ended up being indicted for document forgery and attempted extortion, and Vivian, well, she moved to New York. The last rumor is she's trying to convince a New York businessman that they're soulmates. And you two? How is the relationship? Daisy smiled, watching Malcolm, who was now being helped by Freud, who insisted on carrying the chair cushions in his mouth, and by Coco, who had decided the cushions were perfect for sharpening claws. It's real, she said finally. None of that cinematic passion where everything is perfect. We argue about silly things, like which series to watch on Netflix or whether Freud can sleep in our bed or not. Malcolm leaves socks lying around the house, and I have the terrible habit of testing new recipes at 2 in the morning. Do you live together? For 3 months, and it was the best decision we ever made. Daisy paused, remembering something. Actually, there's something funny about it. What? Freud and Coco hated each other at first. They were like 2 territorialists defending their owners. But now they sleep together on the couch, and if one goes out for a walk, the other waits by the door until they return. How cute. It is. Malcolm says they learned from us that love isn't about competition, it's about partnership. The journalist smiled. And future plans, marriage, children. Daisy looked again at Malcolm, who was now explaining to a group of teenagers how to set up a business plan for a food truck. There was something about the way he talked to the young people, patient, encouraging, genuinely interested, that made her heart race. We're building a life together, she said. And when the time is right, well, no. But for now, we're happy learning to be a family day by day. A family? Me, him, Grandma Rose, the pets, Tommy, Sophia, even Nana Edwards, who now comes here every Monday to exchange recipes with Grandma and complain that Malcolm doesn't eat properly. Daisy laughed. It's a crazy family, built little by little, but it's ours. After the journalist left, Daisy stood watching the community center's movement. A group of children was learning to make coconut kisses with Grandma Rose, while a group of adults discussed digital marketing strategies with a volunteer Malcolm had found. What are you thinking about? Malcolm appeared beside her, putting his arm around her shoulders. About how funny life is. A year ago, I was about to marry a man who didn't really love me in a life that wasn't mine. And now I'm living a life I didn't even know was possible, with a man who loves me exactly as I am, doing something that really matters. No regrets? Daisy thought about the question. In recent months, her family had attempted an awkward reconciliation, especially after Grandma Rose's book became successful and Emma started posting about her successful entrepreneur sister. But Daisy had learned to maintain safe emotional distance, accepting their love within the limits they were capable of offering. No regrets, she said finally. And you? Just one. What? I should have gone to the market that Saturday much earlier. We wasted precious time. Daisy laughed. Ah, but then it wouldn't be the same thing. I needed to be ready to meet you, and you needed to be ready to see me. Philosophy of a baker in love, wisdom of a woman who learned that timing is everything. At that moment, Grandma Rose appeared with a tray of freshly made love strawberry tarts. "Try these," she said with a mischievous smile. "New recipe I invented especially for you two." Daisy and Malcolm tried the sweets, and there really was something different about them. More intense, more complex, more perfect. "What's the secret of this version, Grandma?" "Ah, it's simple." Grandma Rose winked. "It's made with strawberries that cost a fortune, Swiss chocolate that Malcolm brought from a business trip, and a pinch of crystal sugar that Mrs. Thompson blessed especially. But the main ingredient is the same as always: Kewpie.